Welcome to the party.
Here we are, Greg.
How's it going?
Going well, man. Or I shouldn't say it's going well. It's crazy. It's crazy. You
Yeah,
know,
it's
lot
kind of
of
that's the default answer. Like, especially in the upper Midwest, you ask people, "How's it going?" They go, "Fine," or "It's okay, it's good." And if we say it's okay, that's the equivalent of just shit's on fire.
yeah. It's uh 2020's no wonder it's a leap year, right? We just
Oh,
want to leap right over this damn thing and move forward. Um but at the same time, for everybody that wants to get rid of this, my first thought is this is here for a reason, and we need to do a lot of soul searching out there. So
yeah.
Um, before we get into all this stuff again, I just wanted to let our audience know that we're kind of transitioning. I think a couple of weeks ago was actually our 1 year anniversary of this
It
podcast,
was.
actually on YouTube. So, yay! And with that comes a lot of change, comes a lot of understanding of what's out there and what people like to listen to, and how we want to move forward with this. And you and I talked, and instead of the topic thunder, which was always our short form
Hmm.
podcast where you and I would just banter back and forth, um, and the in the middle, which was kind of when we would bring a guest on, and we for whatever reason, and we would talk to them and have
Hmm.
part of it. We're just going to streamline all that. We're just going to streamline all that and just make it Johnny and the Greg podcast.
Yeah.
And it's just gonna go to we're gonna have it on Thursdays now, so there's no more Monday. But that's not saying if something were to come up where we
Hmm.
needed it to immediately address it, it'll come up.
Yeah.
But basically, moving forward, Johnny and the Greg podcast is going to be now on Thursdays, dropping down on Thursdays for you to enjoy throughout the weekend.
Hmm.
You want to add anything?
No, not really. I mean, we're making adjustments based off of trends that we see, and just yeah. I mean, that's it. With any kind of new venture, business, whatever you want to call it. You take time to look back and say, okay, this is where we're gonna this is where we're gonna make some tweaks and changes, and this is just one of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. So, you guys, congratulations. This is basically a retcon, if you want to go to a comic book term. This is a retcon of the podcast. So, this is Johnny and the Greg podcast number 1. So, this might be a collector's podcast one day if there's such a thing. We got a lot to talk about. Um, we still, for those of you that are kind of sick and tired of hearing about this stuff, this will be dropped next Thursday. We are taping it this Thursday, which
Hmm.
is what's the date? The 5th?
Today's the 4th,
Okay, so we're taping it
June
June 4th.
4th.
This will be out next Thursday. So most of these topics might not be, hopefully they've calmed down a little bit, but there's some things that I feel we need to talk about.
Yeah, they're not going to calm down.
All right.
Not at all.
All right. So the first one I thought we should talk about is just actually before we get into anything heavy, Greg, you wanted to clarify something that
Yeah,
yeah.
kind of. Sorry. So I can't remember what episode it was, but we talked about uh if you've ever been cheated on. And we kind of had a conversation. I told a story, you told a story, and but at one point I had said, and it was a very gut reaction, that if you've ever cheated on somebody, you're a garbage person. That was kind of my quote. That's what I said.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm not exactly sure I totally believe that. Um, in the terms that I always think there's a better way, there's a better alternative. If you're in a bad relationship, things need to be adjusted. You can get through that without having to step out. But at the same time, when I started to think about it a little bit more, I know some pretty decent people that have stepped out, but they all had reasons. It was an abandonment issue of some kind or another. They were still technically married, or technically in that relationship, and it just went south.
Right.
So, I kind of thought about those people, and if they heard me say that, and I don't know if these people listen or not, but if they
Right.
hear me say, you know what, if you've cheated on somebody, you're a garbage person, they're gonna go, oh, Greg thinks I'm a garbage person. And again, I probably didn't agree with the choices that those people made at the time, but I I just did some self-evaluation. I went, you know what, that was probably a bit harsh. Again, not that I'm gonna condone that, but I know good people that have just made bad decisions.
Yeah, it's life, I think there's a lot of people out there that find themselves in whatever situation where they're not meaning, they just find themselves in a situation where they never thought they would be.
Sure.
So I think it'd be wrong for us to, I don't know, get on our soapbox and say we would never do that when we're never faced with that. But anyway, since you're clarifying the error about something, I like to clarify the error about, and I hit a little bit on it. I kind of gave a quick summary of it on the last podcast. Was the Frozen 3 post that I did on Facebook.
You're talking about making Elsa have a girlfriend,
right? Making Elsa have a girlfriend,
female love interest. Yeah.
Right. And I think, I can't remember exactly the exact words I used, but I think I said, is this even necessary in a kid's movie? And we had a lot of people respond back. And it was great. And it was great because I've tried very hard, I would say in the last 5 years, of not being married to my opinions, or not being so stubborn and set in my ways that I wouldn't listen to other people's points of view. And God bless you people. You guys threw some things at me that I didn't even think about. And you guys made me realize that I was looking at it from a very short-sighted point of view. I was looking at it, not that I have anything against that direction. My thought was, when I was a kid at that age, I didn't care who dated what. I just cared if the good guy beat the bad guy. So that's what I meant by it. But there is going to come a time, whether it's now or 3 years down the road or 6 years down the road, where I'm going to have to sit my daughter down and explain to her what same-sex marriage is, what relationships like that are, all the different types of relationships that are out there. So for those of you that chimed in on my post, I appreciate it. You helped me really, like you said, take some little inventory with myself and realize that, I think I was looking at that wrong. And so that's it.
And kind of, I mean, just the parenting advice on that is that you can't shy away from those conversations.
No,
because I mean, I know I've heard some parents that do, and they're like, well, we're not going to talk about that until, my son or daughter is in like 8th grade, or until they're in high school.
Right.
And I can tell you, by that time, the world has hit them with that many, many times.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's not in the media, then they can just see it. Like they see it out in the world and they have questions. Yeah. And if you're not going to be kind of that source that they can go to, then they're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree. Not only that, it becomes this. It's like you said. If you don't tell them, that doesn't mean that somebody else, some other parent, didn't tell their kid, and your kid hears it from that kid. So
they're going to keep looking.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
it's the information age. They're going to keep looking, and they're going to find it.
Yeah, and they'll stumble upon it too, and that's when you have to. Maybe it's not the right time that you thought it was going to be, but it's the time now. So whenever that happens, I have to do my job, and
and whether you support a particular lifestyle or not, it doesn't matter. I mean, you still need to inform your child that this is a thing. This is the world.
Yeah. So all right. I think the last clarification I wanted to jump into, because we're talking about kind of a self-reflection and understanding that there were times we've said stuff that we didn't necessarily mean. I want to clarify a little bit more on my statement of Colin Kaepernick, because I think it's relevant right now. I believe I said it on the podcast that basically I realized how wrong I was, but I don't want people to think the reasons why. No, I don't. You're going to think what you think, but I want to clarify the reasons why I was against what Colin Kaepernick did when he did it 4 years ago.
And you're talking about him kneeling.
I'm sorry, yes. Kneeling during the national anthem.
Okay.
I never once took it as him being disrespectful to the flag after he explained why he was doing it. My original thought about it was that he was fake. It was a fake thing. He didn't really mean it. And I'll go into this a little bit. This was the time where he was actually being challenged for the starting role of a quarterback. They had a new head coach come in, and all signs pointed towards he would be a great fit for that coach, but there was word coming from that. And I pay attention to the 49ers. It used to be my mother's favorite team, so I always have an ear. I always have an ear to that team, figuring out kind of what they're doing. And he was being beaten out at training camp by Blaine Gabbert. And I thought he was doing this. He was making this protest for two reasons. Number one, to bring awareness. But I thought his main motivation was that if he got benched, he could always fall on the fact that I got benched, not because I wasn't good enough, but because I made a stand. That's where I thought it was originally coming from. So that's the problem I had with it.
Sure.
I'm getting chills now. I'm getting a little nervous because God, was I wrong? I was completely wrong. And so that's where I was at with Colin Kaepernick. Now going on to a guy that has been the news of the day, really. Drew Brees. Now, I don't know if you know, but anybody that knows me, and they may be shocked to hear about this, Drew Brees is probably my favorite athlete out there that's playing right now. I like him actually more than Tom Brady, which will shock some of my friends. In my opinion, he was almost the living embodiment of Captain America. I thought the guy could do no wrong, which was my fault. I should never put anybody on that type of pedestal. But I did. And he made quite a mistake today.
Now, I just saw a quick little news clip, and I saw one of his teammates' responses to him, but I don't actually know what he said.
Okay.
Because I was
that's good.
in
that's
training
good.
all day. I did not get to.
So
at all.
he was on a Google or a Yahoo Finance
Interview.
thing. Interview. And somebody asked him, how does he feel about them possibly this NFL season taking his teammates taking a knee? And
Oh yeah. Okay.
Right.
And yep, I do.
And his response. Yeah, and his response was basically, and I'm not going to get it right, but his response, I'm sorry, I'm not going to get it word for word. His response was, I will never agree with anybody that is disrespecting the flag.
Right.
Okay.
Which is not what that's about.
Correct.
And it took me a while to get that too, because I was when Kaepernick first did it, I was one of the guys just being like, screw him. And I mean, I already didn't like him being a Packer fan and whatnot. Right. Just kind of had a natural hate towards Kaepernick.
I get it.
And it wasn't until it was.
You mean a sports hate, by the way? A sports hate.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It wasn't until months later, like he was already out of the league. And I read an article, and I don't even know if it was a current article or just one I stumbled upon, where he said, here's why I chose to take a knee. And he had gotten that advice from a soldier, like an active duty soldier, who said, if you want to do it respectfully, you take a knee, as opposed to like turning your back or, any number of things.
Right.
And I went, okay. So he actually went through some channels to say, how can I do this and how can I do it respectfully?
Right.
Um, okay. I mean, I was wrong. I still am not a fan of Kaepernick at all, but him taking a knee, I'm like, okay, well, he got that advice from someone who said this is, and it was like the formal thing. Like the formal thing to do is to take a knee.
Right.
And I went, I had never heard that before. Looked it up. I went, nope, that's it. I'll see if I can find the article and post it in the comments down below. But that was the thing, and it's the same as I hear people say I heard it's military kind of formality that if you take the flag and hang it upside down, that means you're in distress, like your country's in distress. And I'm like, if you did that now, there'd be a whole group of people that would think you're just disrespecting the flag.
Yeah.
In reality, you're showing that you feel our country is in big trouble. We're in distress.
Yeah. Which we are. We're in big trouble. And I think it's okay to admit that. I think the worst thing to do is, I've been a victim, I've done it myself, is to almost kind of ignore it, thinking it'll die down and it'll go back to normal.
Yeah. And
you know what I mean?
Or the outright denial.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of like, no, we're fine. There's nothing wrong. And it's like, oh, there is plenty wrong.
Yeah. But going back to Drew Brees.
Yeah.
I don't think Drew Brees is a racist by any stretch of the imagination. I really don't. I think he was a guy that was insensitive and he made a mistake. I think Drew, if you listen to the quote and kind of get this idea of who this guy is, this guy, for all intents and purposes, if you want to boil him down, he is God and country. And that's what the American flag stands for to him. That's who he is. That's how he was raised. I'm not saying this as an excuse for him, but it's a way of understanding where he's coming from, because I think the message he was trying to send was, like, to him, it's, like I said, it's God and it's country, which means that anything else below that, you don't disrespect those two things above it. Right? No matter what you're trying to accomplish down here, you don't disrespect those. I think that's how he looked at it. So he was giving an honest answer that I don't look at it like that because of this.
Right.
What he didn't do was he didn't take a temperature of the room and realize that you're wrong. Like, you're just wrong. And I'm cool. He posted a video and he posted an apology. And I was cool with the apology until I got to the last part of the apology. Okay. And I'll explain why. I'm not going to read the entire thing. It's on his Instagram, Drew Brees, but I will tell you the part that I had a problem with, because it's like right as you got to the finish line, you stumbled. Right. He ends it with basically, I'm sick about the way my comments were perceived. This is where it upsets me, or not, it makes me go, ooh, shit. I am sick about the way my comments were perceived yesterday, but I take full responsibility and accountability. You're not taking full responsibility and accountability when you're saying basically, I'm sorry, but you took it wrong. Okay. The reason I feel like I understand that now is I listened to a podcast because remember we had these plans of a couple of podcasts that we'll probably do eventually about relationships. And one of them, I was listening to a Breanne Brown podcast. I believe her podcast is called Unlocking Us Podcast.
Okay.
And she had a professor named Harriet, and I hope I say this name right, Lenar. Okay. Harriet Lenar was talking about the art of an apology.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Okay. And the art of an apology, and I mean, there's several things that you don't do that many people do, including myself, have apologized for. Like one of them is you never say "I'm sorry, but," and then you finish it off because you're almost
Mhm.
canceling the
Yeah.
apology. I know I've said to my wife a few times, and I've recently told her that I'm sorry. I didn't know that that was the wrong way to say it. Was I would tell my wife, "I'm sorry." Oh, I'm sorry for what I said, or basically, I'm sorry you took it that way.
Yeah.
Meaning,
There's
you know,
there's another book out there called Languages of Apology,
okay.
and it goes through like how people want to be apologized to. Like there's different forms
Hmm.
of how to apologize for something, and like each people, it's like a love language. Each people have a different style,
Right.
and for some people, simply saying "I'm sorry" is enough.
Right.
Other people, you have to like describe the situation. Sometimes you just need to really go into detail of how wrong you were. I mean, it's all personal. Uh, like it's like a personality profile,
Yeah.
and so I would guess, and I like again, I haven't read any of this, I haven't heard any of it, that it's possible Drew Brees is just like his language of apology could just be, "I'm sorry,"
Right.
and then for him, he's good. For the rest of the people, they're not good.
Right.
And I would think that he has a publicist or somebody
Yeah.
that would help handle that.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
But
Um,
even with those publicists and managers and whatnot, if you're the talent or whatever, you have the power to just go ahead and do what you want.
yeah.
So
So again, I'm not turning my back on Drew Brees, or I don't think he's a bad guy. He is just like how you and I started out this podcast. He made a mistake.
well, he's probably learning. I mean,
Absolutely. And sometimes your best learning moments are your most painful,
oh yeah.
are the
So
ones where you have to self-reflect.
I hope he is able to go back with his teammates, especially the ones that are really mad at him, and yeah, have that crucial conversation of like, okay, so I screwed up. I'm really not sure where I screwed up, but as mad as you are, I can tell I screwed up somewhere. So let's
Let's
figure
talk
that
it out.
out.
And I think Drew's that guy. Like
I hope
somebody,
so.
so I heard somebody say today that that dude needs to retire because there's no way he can go back to New Orleans and play. Okay. That's not Drew.
Hmm.
Drew's the type where if he fucks up like he did, he's going to own it and he's going to probably go
Hmm.
above and beyond to make it right. Now, I don't know if they're going to win the Super Bowl, or I don't know if they're even going to play well this season, and that's really besides the point. The
Yeah.
point is he has to really he has a lot of work ahead of him, but if there's anybody that can do that, it's Drew.
Hmm.
That's
And
my belief.
from my understanding, that city loves him.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
he's
In
done a
fact,
lot for that city.
yeah,
So,
unfortunately, I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
mean, if people are going to tag him as well, in his heart of hearts, he's a racist, I would question that.
Me too.
I would question that. I mean, he misspoke. His feelings are that he doesn't want to disrespect the flag
Correct.
or his country.
Correct.
And I know a lot of people like that. And race has nothing to do with that. That's
Correct.
nationalism. That's
Right.
how you feel about your country.
Right.
Um,
I think
so,
he looked at it from a very selfish point of view. And I don't say selfish as in like he's a selfish person, but this is how I feel.
right.
And I don't think he had a conscience of,
He wasn't looking at a broader picture.
yeah, he wasn't. But because of who he is, I think this is
Mhm.
why it's made such headlines. It's because it's
Sure.
like you never expected Drew to say something like this. But anyway, that's all I have to pretty much say about the Drew Brees thing.
Mhm.
But it also kind of highlights kind of what I think this podcast is mainly about today. And that is the term white privilege. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds dirty. It
Well,
sounds like a bad word.
and for the longest time, a lot of people that not only did they bristle at it, they denied it.
Correct.
Like, and I still know a lot of people that are doing this.
Hmm.
If you say, well, you have white privilege, they're like, no, I don't.
Right.
They're like, I've never to my knowledge, been picked over because I'm white as opposed to somebody else. And the more that I've learned about it in this latest round of upheaval, is that it has nothing to do with anything that I've actively done. It is part of a system that has been created since the Civil War. I mean, that these systems have been brought up to be this way, and everybody can point to one case or another where there's an exception to the rule.
Yeah.
You can talk about, well, there's a white kid who's underprivileged or isn't getting that the bonuses of white privilege because of these reasons. Okay. That I'm sure there's situations like that. At the same time, they're pointing at a black person or Asian American or Latino or whatever who is getting privilege and either regardless of their race or because they're being handed things for, call it affirmative action or whatever.
Right.
And they say, well, there's that too. And again, there's exceptions to everything. What we're talking about is the systemic setup that allows people that look like me to just have it a little bit easier. And I'm recognizing that a lot more, especially in this past couple weeks.
Me too. And what I wanted to if anybody gets anything out of this podcast today, I want you guys to understand that white privilege, I get it. I get it upsets white people. I get it because it almost feels like people are pointing a finger at us and calling us racist. And they're calling us, and they're basically saying, you grew up in a better house than you. It's your fault. And that's not what it is. That's not what it is. So relax, guys. It's not, no one's calling you a racist. What white privilege,
for
the best way
existing in this system.
Yeah.
Now, if you help perpetuate this system and you're actively making decisions, then you're a racist.
Right.
But if you're not, if you're just living your life and doing your job, that doesn't make you a racist. It just makes you a beneficiary of the system that's been put into place well before any of us were born.
Right. I was told, I actually called up Danny Trejo today. I talked to her because I wanted to say, look, this is what I think I'm getting from white privilege. What do you think? And we bounced ideas off each other. So Danny, thank you. She gave me this quote, basically. She says, white privilege is learning about racism instead of like you. Let me start this over again. White privilege, okay, according to Danny, or the definition that I understand the best, it's you have learned about racism, you didn't experience it.
Okay, yeah.
That's a big difference. All right, that's all it means. That's all it means. It means you're learning about it, you're not experiencing it. And that's the biggest thing I want. I'm going to say it one more time because I want people to really understand what this is, because I think people fight this word. I've talked to people, and I think it's because they say privilege. It comes off weird. It comes off like you're royalty or something. Like, I'm not royalty. Like, I'm not, like, I grew up in the middle class America. I didn't have like, my parents were divorced. There were days I didn't know if I was going to have anything. So it's not saying that you didn't grow up in a hard life. That's not what it's saying. Okay. What it's saying is, if you're white and a male, most likely you've never experienced racism. You've only learned about it. It's a big difference.
Well, and I would definitely throw white female. I mean, it's just if you're white, is my understanding.
Well, I mean, the reason why I didn't bring them specifically in is we're the hierarchy,
Correct. Yeah. I mean, if gender inequality is a whole other bag.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
We could do a whole nother show on that.
We probably
I mean, is along the same lines. It's explained to me, like, whatever your hardships are or whatever your struggles are, you've never had to figure that the color of your skin was playing into that.
Right.
From everything of applying for colleges, applying for a loan, looking at houses, you know, looking at all the things in life where people gauge you by a risk factor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you a good bet on a loan? Are
Yeah.
you somebody that we want to invest in?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't ever have to figure your skin color into that, then that's white privilege.
Yeah.
And a lot of and I can see why people bristle at that. I can see why
Absolutely.
they
Me
get
too.
offended.
That's why I want to talk about this.
But just because you're offended doesn't make it fake.
That's true.
It doesn't make it
That's true.
not a reality.
Right.
I grew up in a town that is 99.9% white. And it just is. I mean, and this was in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
I remember one black family that was there. I mean, and literally, and this is a historical correctness, that the KKK started to push into southern Wisconsin in the early to mid 90s. And they targeted my town because we were all white kids. And they're like, oh, there's got to be some recruits there. That's how white we were and kind of still are.
Wow.
So, I mean, that was shocking. I mean, and eye-opening to say, why would they come here? And then you start to take a look around and you're like, oh, I see why they're coming here, because they think that we must be offended because there weren't any black people around.
Right.
But again, you can either take that as an eye-opening experience, or you can just brush it off and be like, yeah, they were just looking for recruits and they just came here.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't just come here.
I don't know about any of that, but it's been definitely eye-opening. I've had some very heavy conversations in my household the last 3 days. Just in terms of how to parent, and are we parenting wrong? And the question, of, do you stand up for something that you used to let slide?
Mm-hmm.
Those are a lot of questions that have been going around in the house. But yeah, I just wanted people to, I wanted to have talking points. I was going to throw up a post before this podcast. Maybe I still can, or I'm just going to take a poll that what do people think white privilege means? Because I think a lot of people have it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I know I did before I educated myself. And I think that's the problem, so.
Well, and going to those sources, I mean, going to people that can explain it better, or are willing to sit down and even explain it to you at all.
Exactly. And I think there's a lot of people out there, Greg, that want to. They're just afraid to.
I know there's one guy I would like to talk to. I haven't reached out to him yet, but I went to high school with him. He's out in L.A. trying to make it as an actor or a screenwriter.
I think you talked about this guy before.
Yeah, his name's Ian Easton. I follow him. I mean, we interact on social media. I follow his different projects. He's got one called Dr. Chorizo. It's a sketch comedy that he's in with another black man as his writing partner. But part of their comedy shtick is a little bit that he's white and he's black, and they've done a couple of sketch pieces. One called Blackie Sack, which is hilarious. You can look it up on YouTube. I will also link to it down below. They've got a whole episode of how the white guy's name is the N-word, and he's like, "Yeah, I can't say my own nickname; I'll get beat up." and so they're turning into a comedy piece. But I would like to talk to him because it seems to be he is accepted into a culture that I would almost say he didn't grow up in. I mean, maybe he did. He came to my high school like halfway through.
Mm-hmm.
And he graduated with us, and then he disappeared.
Yeah.
Went to Chicago and never saw him again. And I'm not even going to say that we were friends in high school. We had some classes together. But I'm just interested because he has chosen a career path that I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But I don't know. Maybe I'll reach out to him and see if we could have a conversation with him, because I think he probably has a pretty unique perspective.
Absolutely.
I mean, and he's very much Black Lives Matter. He's supportive. I mean, on his social media page, he is putting himself out there in full support of the protests. I'm not going to say he's supporting the riots, but he's definitely saying, we tried it other ways and nobody listened. So I interested to see kind of his perspective on things. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I'll reach out to him. Let's see if we can. Ian, if by chance you're listening, I will tag you when this comes out on Facebook. See if you're interested. Maybe we can have you on.
Yeah. Speaking of riots, looters, I lose. I really don't think the rioters or the looters that are going around right now, I think they're being selfish. I think they're looking at this as I think they're criminals.
It's opportunistic for sure.
Yeah, they're opportunistic. They're looking at a situation that they're taking advantage of. But speaking of those rioters and those looters, you and I talked a little bit about it, but do you think the military should step in right now? Do you think that?
No, I think that is a bad move.
Okay, interesting, because let me give you mine that I want to talk to you about why you think that, because maybe you can help me out on this. I think that maybe in terms of the rioting and the looting, not the protesting. I want to make that clear, because the protesters and the versus the rioters and the looters, it's two different things. I don't know how breaking or busting down a Target is Black Lives Matter. Like, I don't know what you're proving.
Right.
That has nothing to do with what happened in Minneapolis. It has nothing to do with it. Okay. So if you think you're doing something, deep down, you're not. Like, Target has nothing to do with it. Going into a Gucci store or ripping off Nike merchandise or busting all that stuff. So I believe the military is needed for those people to squash that, because right now what it's showing is they're getting away with it. Because the cops are backing off. The mayor's saying, just let this burn out and then we'll go back to normal. I don't agree with that. I think you need to stop this I guess Joe Rogan said it best today. You got to stop this flaming of the mind. It's like this is what's acceptable, so let's do it. It becomes this mob mentality, and that needs to be squashed. Now, I'm not against. I mean, now I've seen some horrible things of cops shooting rubber bullets at peaceful protesters, and I believe a reporter lost an eye with a rubber bullet. Like, that's insane shit.
Yeah, and I've seen, and again, cell phones are everywhere. Recording devices are everywhere. I saw one video of a cop trying to detain somebody. Wasn't having much success. Kind of did one of these to look around. Took I think a baton, like his baton, shoved it in the guy's hand, and then started screaming, "Drop the weapon."
Oh my God. Are you serious?
Yeah.
Do you remember what video you saw that?
It was on Reddit. Saw it
really?
on Reddit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think it was in Atlanta. I wonder if I'm correct. So it's things like that I'm like, okay, so the cops are already feeling attacked.
Yes.
And
of course.
And I think, I don't know. So when we say the military,
yes.
Are we including the National Guard in that conversation?
You know what? I'm not that well informed on it. I don't know how this happens. Because I don't know if did the Marines come in?
I'm looking at like three stages. We've got the police officers, we got cops, we got the National Guard, and then we have like the United States Army.
Okay.
And those are different organizations. I am in favor of the idea of the National Guard coming in, to help keep the peace.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not in favor of a full-on military action, like military mobilization. That's martial law, and that's
I
a
think I'm with.
slippery slope.
Yeah, it's a very slippery slope, and I understand both sides. I really do. If the cops are overwhelmed by the rioters and the looters, not the protesters, the rioters and the looters. Okay. Those are the people, for those of you that have a hard time, or maybe you guys don't know, and you're saying, what's the difference between a protester and a riot and a looter? The riot and the looters are violent.
Breaking shit and stealing it.
Yeah. They're breaking shit and stealing it. That has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter or equal rights or what. It has nothing to do with that. It is self-serving people that are just grabbing Nikes, So
in Madison, there was a jewelry store that they lost thousands of dollars of merchandise because they broke in and took it.
Yeah, I saw something on Facebook today. A black police officer was killed in St. Louis, stopping rioters and looters defending one of his friend's stores.
Yeah.
Right. So if the cops can't handle it, which right now it's showing they can't, unless the mayor's sitting there and saying like, don't engage, which I don't fucking understand that. But if they can't do it, who else do we turn to?
I think part of the philosophy of just let the rioters go is that they're saying, well, those businesses have insurance, they will be compensated, they can rebuild, but their premiums are going to go way, way up. I did hear somebody say those businesses that close down, someone else can swoop in and buy that property or buy that business for pennies on the dollar. And it turns into almost like a slumlord type of situation.
Yeah. I'm talking about mom and pop stores, right?
So am I.
People that, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did find a quote. It is from a fictional character, but you know what? Sometimes it's still a good quote.
Absolutely.
So this is from Admiral Adama, who is from Battlestar Galactica fame. But the quote is, there's a reason you separate military and police. One fights the enemies of the state. The other serves and protects the people. When the military becomes both, then the enemies of the state tend to become the people. And I like that because, like, if we're bringing in full-on U.S. Army to really police, I mean, we have trained killers. I mean, that's what an army is.
Yeah.
They're
singular in their mission.
I mean, and we have specialists. Well, maybe he's a sniper. Maybe he's infantry. I know that they have like foreign relations positions, but I think the National Guard is meant to, they are protecting the nation. So that's that in-between point. I mean, they are trained in firearms as well. I mean, they can defend. But when you're bringing in the army and saying, and what are you going to tell them? I mean, if you're going to say, stand here and don't let anybody through, the National Guard can do that too. But if you're going to say, don't let anybody through and feel free to unholster your firearm if you need to, that's our army attacking our own people.
No, I get you with that. I think you and I are on the same side with that. Okay, so if the police can't do it, so you're saying just the National Guard. You're saying just them.
At most, I'm saying the National Guard.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with police who obviously, I think your brother, you kept using the word, not triggered, cranked up. What he kept using something that's saying that they're like this right now. I feel inside, right?
Well, I think they're feeling very attacked.
Of course,
because they are being attacked.
They are being attacked. Which, by the way, let's just real quick shout out. We're not saying that all cops are bad at all whatsoever. In fact, I have a deep respect for law enforcement because what they do every day is simply amazing. And a part of me thinks though that there's a lot of undiagnosed PTSD Did I say that wrong?
Yeah. No, you got it.
Okay. That is running through the police officers daily.
Sure.
And
I posted a Venn diagram. And Venn diagrams are the interconnected circles.
yes.
And it said that you can be outraged about George Floyd's death. So I said you can be upset about his death.
Mm-hmm.
You can be supportive of police officers, and you can think rioting and looting is wrong.
Right.
Like you can exist in the middle of all of them.
I know the picture you're talking about. I'm going to put that for our
icon. For
yes,
picture
our
for
icon.
Because that's really true, and I feel like that's where I'm at. I support good cops.
I think
I think most of I don't know. There are people out there who just hate cops. Like they hate peacekeepers.
Yes.
They think that they. I mean, and it's always been
you're
like
talking
that.
about. You're talking about those people now that are walking up with cameras. Just there's this one guy on YouTube who just starts shit with cops. He just starts shit and films them, and he's just starting shit.
And I've known enough cops that these are people too. They have feelings. They get triggered. I mean, you can't just scream. I mean, they do a good job, but if you're screaming in somebody's face, he's having bad thoughts about you.
Here's the thing, I'm touching a little bit more deeper that I want people to really understand when you're dealing with a police officer. Most of the time, if you're not a cop or if you're not dealing with the public, okay, even if you're dealing with the public, most of the time, even if you're in retail or wherever, you're not dealing with people on their worst day.
On their best, you're not dealing with them on their best day.
Yeah, you're not dealing with you're not dealing with them on their worst day. Not only that, if a customer's coming up to you to exchange something, or they want to talk to the manager, and you're a manager of a retail store, you probably understand there's not a real high possibility you're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You ask a police officer going into any situation, there's a probability that you're going to die.
It's in their mind. Yep.
Right. Now, that's every day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So that's they have to, that's a very tough job to go into every day.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I just want people to keep that in mind, okay? That this is what they're going through. And I'm not giving them excuses that it's okay to react the way that some of them do. I'm just saying that this is what you're dealing with. This is what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I threw you off.
No, it's good. So back to the military question.
Yeah.
The cops need backup. Like they need to have an outside agency that can come in and kind of be the heavy. And I think that's the National Guard. Okay. Because what the National Guard can do is that they can post up on those streets. They can carry the riot shields. They can disperse the crowds. And then they get to leave.
Right.
Meanwhile, the cops that are there that are doing that, they've got to go back and police that section later.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of the kind of the adverse feelings involved. I mean, I know if I'm a cop and I'm getting spit on and stuff thrown at me and everything like that, and then in 6 months from now, I'm going to see that same person and they've called me in to help them, there's going to be some animosity there. Now, a good cop is going to do his job no matter what.
Right.
But there's going to be, I mean, it just creates a tough situation.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's where I'm like, okay, have the guard go in and
kind of get it back in order.
And be the heavy. They're the ones shooting the rubber bullets if they're needed. I'm a little, some of that riot and anti-personnel stuff.
I've actually heard that when they shoot a bullet, they're actually supposed to shoot at the ground near the person, and it bounces off and hits the person. Now,
I don't know tactics.
That's what I heard. Now, nobody confirmed that to me. I just heard it in kind of a passing conversation on the radio. So I think the military, and when you say military, it sounds like you're taking the National Guard away from the military. Like they're a lesser. Not that it's taking any value away from them. I'm just saying.
Right. I don't want to demean any National Guardsmen.
Of course not.
To this. But I think if you're bringing in the U.S. Army, and even if it's just in name only, you bring in the National Guard.
Yeah.
These are guys that if there's a national emergency, they are rushing in to help.
Right.
They're sandbagging to help people in flooding. They're helping evacuate situations. I mean, they are the National Guard. They're protecting within our borders. They're protecting our nation. The U.S. Army is when we're just like, hey, we're in a war and we're going to go kick some ass.
Right.
That's what I think. U.S. military. That's when I think Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. I don't think of that when I think of National Guard. And I think that maybe I thought I was typical in my thought of that. Maybe I'm not.
Yeah, I don't know either, to be honest. But I do know something. Okay, so if it is the National Guard, then I'm totally okay with that. Go in there, get rid of those criminals, the rioters and the looters, the people that are causing trouble, and handle that, and then give it back to the police officers and the peacekeepers. Mm-hmm. Totally fine with that. So I think you and I are on the same page with that. I just don't know how you stop the looters and the rioters with just cops who are clearly overrun.
Well, and I don't know. I mean, I've seen videos of people policing their own property, like everything from you just post up a big dude in front of your door, and as people run up, he's like, "Nope, get out." Yeah, I saw that work on a couple.
Well, that's a slippery slope too.
Again, it is.
Yeah,
and I've also seen people like post up like they're in full-on militia gear, so they've got their flak jackets, they got their ARs hanging, and they're armed to the teeth, standing outside a convenience store, like they're going to shoot somebody. And I'm like, as an average citizen, I'm not sure if I'm going to stand guard at the local cigarette depot willing to shoot people over what's inside there. That's not, I mean, I'm not going to do that.
No, yeah, I get that. But you're also not the type of guy that's going to strap up and put on a bulletproof vest and with, in all intents and purposes, be a militia guy. That's not you.
Right.
I don't think that's you. Like,
well, yeah. Well, but the question is it worth it? Is getting that level of protection for your favorite liquor store? is that because there are people that are out there doing?
I think that's over the top.
I saw it was somewhere in Utah.
For every guy that's having a good purpose like that, who wants to protect Joe's liquor store because it's his best friend, right? He has good intentions, but for every guy that has the good intentions, there's one guy that's just ready to get his gun off.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at. I mean, I saw it was a town in Utah that they have a local militia, which by law they're allowed to have, and that militia is policing all these stores up and down the streets. They're like, we don't have rioters here. I'm like, okay, I can see why. Yeah. But at the same time, is one of those guys going to pull a trigger on somebody going for a kill shot?
Yeah.
Over a 175,
Yeah, exactly.
Vodka or Tito's?
Or
really?
A 40, yeah.
You're going to shoot a guy over a gallon of Tito's?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Right.
And that's where these governors, these mayors are like, you know what? It's not worth it.
I guess my problem with that is, though, you're showing people
that they can get away with it. Yep. I'm not sure where this falls.
Yeah.
I know if we went out and arrested everybody that was looting, our jails and our prisons couldn't do it. I mean, we'd have to set
They're
up.
overcrowded anyway, right?
Yeah. Well, what are you going to do? Keep everybody in the local high school, which is currently closed because schools are out. But is that what you're going to do? I mean, that doesn't make sense.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy, for sure. I think we're about 54 minutes in this. I think we hit it.
We have solved nothing.
Yeah, we've solved nothing.
Yeah, I don't know.
If anything, again, I hope you guys pull away from this what white privilege means and not what you think it might mean. Okay, so if somebody, I don't know, points a finger at you and says you have white privilege, just like, it's okay. You're not a racist. You just may not understand. And I mean, and I clearly don't. I don't. I never will. I won't know what that's like. So, all right, Greg. Should we go into a cheerful fact of the day?
Do we have one?
I don't know. It's always random. So
it is.
I really don't know. Let's see what we got here. Oh, goodness. USA is the world's only industrialized nation that taxes citizens who live overseas, even if their income is generated in a foreign country and they never return to the USA. So I don't think that's cheerful. I don't know how they get away with it.
How? I mean,
leave it to us, right?
How can we be taxed if we're not there? Does that mean like if I move to Canada, working for a Canadian company, living in Canada, I'm going to be taxed as a U.S. citizen?
I believe you are. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. You know what I thought was crazy too? You know, NBA players, I don't know if this is every athlete, but I do know NBA players, for every city they travel to, they get taxed for that from their salary.
For the different,
except like Florida and Texas, whatever those states that don't have any state tax.
That don't have income tax.
Yeah.
That's I've heard when actors go into negotiations, a lot of Canadian actors, they will have a home in Canada and they will have a home in LA.
Yeah.
And so when they go into those negotiations, if you are saying that you're from Canada, you get paid less.
Really?
Yeah. I was Stephen Amell, who plays Arrow, or used to play Arrow on the CW TV show Arrow. Yeah. I was listening to a podcast with him. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was for the Turtles movie or something else, or maybe when Arrow's he goes into a meeting with the exec and they shake hands. The guy's like, "So I hear you're from Canada." And he's like, "Not today." And because if he would have said, "Yes, I'm from Canada," he would have lost like a pretty big percentage of the pay. Yeah.
Wow. I wonder if the same for Australia, like Chris Hemsworth and Mel Gibson. And
so here's something. Okay, so since I know that we're going to backtrack here and talk about white privilege, but this is something that's interesting.
Yeah, go ahead.
In terms of like how immigration works in this country, because everybody, like, when the immigration topic is hot, they're like, there's systems for that. People should, if they want to work and live in this country and become U.S. citizens, they should be able to go through the proper channels. Here's the rub. Part of the reason they can't get into that system is because, especially in California, like Chris Hemsworth, Benedict Cumberbatch, any of the Hemsworth brothers, Hugh Jackman, pretty much any actor that's from a foreign country that's living in LA, they need work visas to be able to stay in the U.S. and work. But what the studios do, is that they have their high-powered immigration lawyers. Like, that is one department of their studios, immigration lawyers, and they're filling out all of the paperwork and getting that together for the actors, and then they pay to have them jump to the front of the line. So this is acting, this is musicians, this is anybody in the entertainment industry. They pay to jump to the front of the line, which means, Jose Gutierrez, who's just trying to, work an accounting job, he gets pushed down the line, and his process now takes years. That's wrong.
Absolutely, that's wrong.
That is absolutely wrong.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah, that we can talk about that.
I had no idea that happened.
Oh, we've got some friends that they are now naturalized U.S. citizens, but they said this is part of that process.
So Chris Hemsworth, when he has to come here, because I know he lives in Australia.
Yeah. But when he's working in the U.S. and living in the U.S. for that amount of time, he needs a work visa.
And he gets ahead of the line than everybody else.
The studio pays pays the county or the feds or whatever department it is, which is all structured out. Oh, hey, we can expedite your application if you pay this amount of money. Studio pays for that.
So the studio pays for the not waiting in line at Six Flags Great America, basically.
Yep, because they need their actor to be on the job. Meanwhile, that just pushes everybody else down the line.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yep.
That's unfair, obviously.
That's people working the system.
Yeah, not only that, but it's that. Oh man, because I'm a big fan of Chris Hemsworth, so it's like you're almost like.
But I don't know if he knows about it at all. It's not the actor. It's not the actor saying, "Oh, here's what I'm gonna do." He's not doing that. That's the studio saying, "Hey, buddy, don't worry about all that visa stuff. We got it all worked out. You just need to show up."
Is that the same for like when Keanu Reeves went to Rome for John Wick?
I think it all depends on the individual country's laws.
Yeah, interesting.
I mean, he probably needed a work visa of some kind.
I didn't know that. Thanks, Greg, for the knowledge. Knowledge by Greg.
There we go.
All right, man.
Right.
I think we'll close this up. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. We appreciate you. Real quick, if you've made it this long, Ireland, who are you? We'd like to give you a shout out. There's someone listening to us in Ireland.
There is, yeah.
Yeah, and in Ontario. So let us know who you are.
We would love to know.
Yeah. And if you guys don't make it this far, I'm going to say something on the next podcast in the beginning so you hear this, because we want to know who you are. Just give us a shout out.
You can DM us on Instagram or Facebook, something.
Absolutely.
We just want to know who you are.
Yeah, give you a thanks.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's it. So again, thank you for listening, everybody. Heavy stuff. We're gonna try to get a little lighter as this goes. Actually, I can't promise that. I have no idea. Like I said, we could be talking about Sharknadoes next week or something, for crying out loud. World's getting crazy.
Earthquakes in Yellowstone are making some people nervous. The super volcano that's underneath there.
Yeah,
we could all be dead next week.
So stay tuned.
All right.
All right. On that cheery note, Johnny and the Greg podcast number 1. We are out. Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening.